The opinions expressed in this podcast are solely those of the participants and do not reflect the opinions or beliefs of Marshall University, Marshall University Libraries, the Department of English, the College of Liberal Arts, Marshall University Film Studies, or HerdCon. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the latest episode of Giant Bombs, exploring cinema through famous film flops. I'm Cody Lumpkin, and with us today is Professor Ian Nolte, as usual, colleague in the English department. And we have a special guest today, Professor Nicole Lawrence. Nicole, she is also one of our colleagues in the Marshall English department. She teaches freshman composition, creative writing, and film classes, and you've been with us since 2013.
Yeah.
So
quite a while.
Yes. So today we're going to talk about a film that kind of was a disappointment at the box office. Wasn't a huge bomb. It was, one would say, it's a disappointment. But is The Life Aquatic with Steve Zissou, starring Bill Murray, Cate Blanchett, Owen Wilson, among others. And this was co-written and directed by Wes Anderson. The IMDb film summary of this is, with a plan to exact revenge on a legendary shark that killed his partner, oceanographer Steve Zissou rallies a crew that includes his estranged wife, a journalist, and a man who may or may not be his son. So intrigue abounds. So we're really glad to have you, Nicole.
Thank you for inviting me.
Always enjoy your perspectives and insights and art and all that good stuff. So you were interested in talking about this film and kind of wondering why are you interested in this film? I think it's a lovely film, by the way. I'd never seen it before.
Oh, really?
So,
yeah,
yeah.
Not. I know we talked about this earlier, but I did bring this hat to wear, and I am very disappointed that you all did not feel within you to wear a red beanie to honor the movie. Even though it is 90 degrees outside.
Yeah. all my, we call them toboggans back down in Georgia.
Toboggans.
Yeah. Or their hat, but they're all dark. Okay, they're all dark gray or they're black.
I selected this movie because I saw it in the theater in 2004. I was blown away by it. I'd never seen anything like it before. I don't think I had a relationship with Wes Anderson really until then. And I think it's such a funny, strange movie. And then finding out it wasn't a success, because I think you had said, oh, like, everyone that I know saw this movie. How did it flop so hard?
I was surprised when you picked this movie, like, you're like, oh, I know a famous film flop, this movie. And I was like, oh, really? And I just had never really investigated the box office returns on this one. And I went and looked, and I was like, oh my gosh. And it did just kind of like intuitively surprise me, because it is true. In 2004, every human being I knew at the time was super invested in this movie, anticipating it. And I think I went like on opening weekend to go see this movie, as did everybody I spoke to at that time.
Yeah.
This was a big movie for us.
And you saw it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you liked it then?
Oh, yeah. I loved it. I thought it was great.
Okay. And you didn't?
I didn't see it, though. I remember I was in grad school at the time, getting my MFA in creative writing at Purdue University. And needless to say, there were lots of people in my grad program across the grad program. I was like, oh yeah, we're going to go see that. And I thought it was interesting, but I think I was not in the right headspace in 2024 to see anything, the kind of assumptions and cliches that we make about Wes Anderson films. Like, that's a Wes Anderson film. It looks twee. It looks precious. I think I would have forced myself to dislike the film, where I feel a little more cosmopolitan and Catholic in the wider sense of the word. If I would be more open to it, which I thoroughly enjoyed this film. But I think I was not in the right place in my late 20s to watch this film.
Yeah. I've been teaching the Grand Budapest Hotel for a few years now. It's probably one of my all-time favorite movies. And I hadn't revisited Life Aquatic in a really long time.
That's something that surprised me when I went back to this one, is if you asked me, do you like the movie The Life Aquatic? I was like, oh yeah, I love that movie. But then when I went back to it this time, I was like, it has been a long time since I looked at this movie.
Yeah.
So I was surprised at just like some like returning to it now felt really different than my memory of it. in a way that was surprising to me.
I pounced on this opportunity to have you captive to talk about this movie.
Yeah.
When you asked, which movie would you like to talk about,
Yeah.
and I couldn't help myself.
Also, we do that to each other all the time. So
I
I
was
other people. So.
really surprised when I had it on the screen to confront it again, because at I was like, well, this is a movie everyone in the world loved in 2004, and it was the most successful movie of all time.
I was shocked.
Yeah, and I couldn't imagine that. Then I went back and looked at like the facts of it, and I was like, "Oh no, not really." This was audiences turning away from the Wes Anderson energy that had developed over the course of his first 3 features. Really, I think the big Studio 2 pictures that had come out, Rushmore and the Royal Tenenbaums, were very successful films, and I think Bottle Rocket much more successful on home video. And I do think, like, for that reason, like having seen on home video Royal Tenenbaums, which I think is a truly great movie, and Rushmore, which is a film I really love, like I was like very excited about this director, very excited about this film. And then like watching it, I was just confronted by the idea that, oh my God, it was 22 years ago this movie came out.
God, it's painful.
Yeah.
I also finding out that Fantastic Mr. Fox was something that didn't do well either. That apparently the Grand Budapest Hotel is just his most successful film.
Well, by far.
Yes, by far. Yeah.
Looking at his list of films, he has like quietly ranked up a long list of features. Like he's basically put out a feature every 2 or 3 years since 1996.
Yes.
Which is like really an incredible body of work. And the majority of them were like financially successful, but none of them were like standout breakaway hits. But with the closest one being Grand Budapest Hotel, and I think Moonrise Kingdom sold a lot of tickets too. The rest of them were like, I would say like more moderately successful. Like Isle of Dogs was like sold more tickets than its budget, but I don't think it like tripled its budget, like something you'd call like a smash hit.
Something that so in 2004, I don't know what his funding was like, but when you listen to Bill Murray in an interview when he's like, he got big from Rushmore. He was kind of like coming back into the scene. And he's talking to Charlie Rose about how, I guess, Touchstone, who is owned by Disney, wouldn't give him more money for things. And they had this shoestring budget. And Bill Murray's like, I'll just give you the money. I'll give you the money to fly this little plane in the sky or whatever. And that he has like several copies of Bottle Rocket because I guess his assistant was like, you need to read the script. Oh, and here's a copy of Bottle Rocket. Did you get my copy of Bottle Rocket? No, I didn't look at it. Oh, do you need another copy of Bottle Rocket? So he has 4 copies of Bottle Rocket. But what drew him to the script was that it was so planned out and the writing was so, I guess, different for him, exciting for him, and he took this role. And I think it's interesting. He worked with Ivan Reitman. He worked with Harold Ramis, like these people from Second City and Toronto people. But this is kind of this moment of a break off with this very different kind of new director. And God, Bill Murray works really hard for Wes Anderson, and the kind of sacrifices he kind of goes through for a Wes Anderson. It's not James Cameron, the Abyss level type of suffering, but anytime there's water or it's not good.
Yeah, yes, I do. And this is, I think, an important thing, maybe that might be hard to think about right now in this moment, is that particularly in 1998 with Rushmore, but really in 2004 with Life Aquatic, this was part of a rediscovery or like a reemergence for Bill Murray as a new kind of performer. Really seen his peak of success in like the 1980s through the early 1990s. Maybe it had been like 10 years since Bill Murray was considered a box office attraction when these Wes Anderson movies were coming out. And then he really did reinvent himself as a go-to older character actor for interesting, independent or independent-minded features.
Yeah.
From that time through today.
In that interview, he says that the writing in scripts is a word processor problem, that people pull up like screenwriters pull up the word processor and they try to fill the time in with words, with what the words look like on the page or by word count or whatever. And I think it's interesting that the entire script for Zissou was written in longhand. Noah Baumbach and Wes Anderson would go to the same restaurant. There was a guy there apparently named Cody, which is why the dog is named Cody. And
Three-legged dog.
yes. And those books make it into the film. They're kind of these precious objects that people are kind of holding within the movie. But that Wes Anderson writes in longhand, even with his film partners. I think that's interesting.
Yeah.
And that Bill Murray is like, oh, all these other scripts are terrible because it's a word processor problem,
Huh.
which I've never heard that take before.
Well, I think clearly what would later be called a renaissance for a particular, I think Bill Murray had his Murray-sance, if you will, with working with Jim Jarmusch, working with Sofia Coppola, working with Wes Anderson, and somebody that looks like his kind of career's kind of whatever he was doing isn't the thing anymore, and it kind of revitalizes him, and he's seen in a new way. So I think that's, it's exciting. It's a lot, kind of the equivalent of like Rick Rubin making the Johnny Cash American records. Like, we think you're cool, dude. Make some songs. Make them songs like we know you can make those songs. And it just kind of, it's not like it's a complete and utter transfer. It's still fundamentally Bill Murray. He's kind of a jerk. He's kind of charming. He's kind of dangerous. You shouldn't root for the guy, but you do. There's really nobody like Bill Murray. He is a unique kind of screen presence.
Yeah. Yes.
And I do think one of the things I think about is there are writers that are writing scripts to get produced, and then they're writer directors, and so they're making the film with them in mind, which I think is a fundamentally different way of writing screenplays. Because if you're writing to get, you're just like, let me make it in a way that other people can say, oh, look, I can do my thing with this script and it's going to be awesome. Whereas by this point, I think clearly Anderson had a clearly established sensibility, and he was kind of transitioning from, I think, his early films to his kind of mid-career films, even when he's only like 36. It's kind of got a midlife crisis thing going on here with both the film and the main character. But I think it's just something that feels a little more precise, a little more tactile when I'm gonna write a script for a film that I'm gonna do. So I think that helps a lot with that.
I was really, one of the first things that shocked me about this movie when it first comes on the screen is the first time they show Bill Murray. I was looking at it, I said, I can't believe I thought this was old Bill Murray.
Oh.
Like, how old was he in this movie? Like
54.
Barely
He looks
past middle age.
so great.
Yes, and I just remember in 2004 thinking, oh, Bill Murray's so old. This isn't the guy from Ghostbusters. He's an old man now. He was so he's very vital in this movie, and young and vibrant.
This is very sexy. Bill Murray shows up for this film.
Yeah. The tiniest Speedos, so tan.
Yeah,
so tan.
And, and now just the idea that this was an old man to me in 2004 is so funny. I am that age now. I am Bill Murray's age in this movie.
Wes Anderson is older than him now.
Yeah, it was older than he was then.
Older than he was then.
That's crazy to think about.
Yeah. I love this quote in the article I shared with you all, that Mike D'Angelo piece. That Anderson was the first director to recognize and coax out the streak of grave melancholy underlying his relentless sarcasm.
Yeah.
He had to leave the set to go get his Golden Globe for Lost in Translation. That is a very dear movie to me as well. And so these back-to-back movies with Murray just kind of like super imprinted on me my love and adoration for him.
Mm-hmm. And I think you really seen even in some of his earlier, I think something like Groundhog Day, which is a great film. You get those hints at the depths that he could do as this kind of melancholy, depressed.
Oh, sure.
Running with this kind of running on chutzpah, but having a huge inferiority complex. All that stuff's going on in there, and they really, I think a lot of people when they were younger, they watched these films like, I know what I could do with Bill Murray if I had a chance to make a film, and it'll be awesome. So I mean, it's a good sense of him largely in his career being a very good collaborator with not only the other actors, but with the filmmaker. the
I'm
directors.
pretty sure he stuck to script, except for that moment when he pulls the gun out on Kate
Oh,
Blanchett.
do you think that was
Like,
improvised?
that is such a shocking
Yeah.
moment.
Why would you? How dare you?
Oh my, yeah. So that was, I guess, a little Marie insertion there. And Kate Blanchett's so wonderful, so young. I guess she was modeled after Jane Goodall,
Okay, all right, that makes sense.
like her costuming
Yeah.
and yeah.
I'm very like having not seen this film and then seen that particular accent. I was like, I've never heard Kate Blanchett sound like. She's from Australia, right? So she's played the Queen. She's played Queen Elizabeth. She's played an elf. She can play an American quite well. But whatever that accent was, I was like, this isn't a realistic accent, but
Oh.
I dig it.
Oh, same with Owen Wilson's accent.
Oh, yeah,
Oh.
yeah.
So genteel,
Yeah.
you know? I'm like, what is this accent? So not typical Owen Wilson, too.
Yeah. And there's always something that there's a kind of, I think no matter how old Owen Wilson gets,
Mm.
there's a kind of aw shucks charm that makes him work very well as a kind of character that you're kind of seeing this world through a little bit. Like this is a new place to him and he's adapting and you kind of get his passion. The film's passion comes through of like, this is new and interesting and fun. And I have a family of sorts.
Yeah. I was living with my grandfather when I saw this film. And the father figure film, I mean, that resonates with me. And so the fact that so many of his films are about father figures.
I mean, almost all of them.
All of them.
All of them deal with an absent and then often misplaced desire for a father figure.
Yeah.
Or
even
a mentor and a father
Yeah.
figure. Yeah.
yeah,
or
even
the
Phoenician scheme.
Or the conflation of those two roles.
Yeah.
Yeah. Always constantly in his movies, which I think is like an interesting, like monomaniacal writing theme.
Yeah.
That weaves its way through all this list of films. Also, I don't know why, but all of the films have a fascination with hotels.
Yes.
Which I thought this was the one that doesn't. Because I was like, oh, yeah, it's all on the boat. And then I was watching it this time. I was like, no, by God, they end up at a hotel by the end of it. Like,
Destroyed by a typhoon.
yeah. So, those, like, the misplaced father figure in a hotel always, constantly return to, again, almost like obsessively. It's so interesting to me in these films.
I love that Gene Hackman in The Royal Tenenbaums kept telling him to pull his pants up like a man because he wears his pants really low. And that it was such a contentious, Gene Hackman was so mad the whole time filming the Royal Tenenbaums. But I love that it kind of projected onto that character anyway as this kind of terrible dad figure.
I mean, also Gene Hackman. That was one of his it wasn't quite his last film, but it was one of his last films before he retired. So I think Welcome to Mooseport was his last. Was that his last? That was his last film. But there was a reason why Gene Hackman never worked again with Wes Anderson. It was probably a mutual feeling. It clashed, but that can make for really compelling narratives, even though that might be painful for everyone as they make it.
I remember reading once Gene Hackman had some interesting opinions about how important the director was in a movie and how much control the director should have over his performance.
It's interesting. I don't know what kind of directing style Gene Hackman had experienced before, but Murray is very much like Wes Anderson's very soft-spoken. He's a very kind of gentle director and just watches everybody. And I wonder if that was just super off-putting to Gene Hackman. And I don't know what kind of directors he worked with and their style, but Anderson's quite different.
Yeah. He worked with Eastwood. He won an Academy Award, deservedly so, for playing a little Bill in Unforgiven, and he'd done one. And I think Eastwood is like, one or two takes. If it looks good, let's move along because I'm a producer too on this. So I guess anything that felt like, because there's so much here that is clearly like the side tracking shots. Everything's very meticulously put together. And if you're like an act, like particularly this is why stage actors want to be stage actors. Is like we run through the whole thing, and when you're a film actor, you're like, okay, well, we're gonna wait. I gotta get myself ready, and hold on. There's a lot of this. Everything's got to be ready until you can do your scene. So imagine if you're anyone that's used to more kind of spontaneity, you've got to like hold it and you got to keep that momentum or however many takes they're going to take. It can be emotionally exhausting. So I understand where actors are coming from. If they're like, we've done, even if we've done like 5 takes, I'm like, I'm ready to move along. Let's do something else. So.
Oh, there's really pitiful footage of Seymour Cassell.
Yeah.
Is that his name? In the bald cap. He's just like, oh, he really hated wearing it. He was kind of pervy. I don't know. He just had this kind of creepy energy. And then Wes Anderson would be kind of talking to him through a screen as he's underwater. And he's like, smile, smile. And then he would just keep coming back up out of the water. Then he'd have to be sent back down into the water. And he hated it. He just wanted to smoke cigars.
I bet it did suck filming underwater sequences. They didn't look very hard.
I honestly don't know anything about that actor or what he's been in. Or
He's been in John Cassavetes' films.
Oh,
He's a
okay,
character actor. Yeah, he's been around for a long time.
Okay.
He was a long-standing, like, got supporting cast and bit parts and things like that. So
He's very funny, even though he's so short, such a brief role. Yeah.
I have an idea about this movie.
Yeah.
And why it might not have done well at the box office. Because I thought it was curious that it didn't do well at the box office because it was coming off Royal Tenenbaums, which was a really successful movie, like financially successful, but not like runaway success, but definitely critically very successful, like a much talked about movie from 2001 when the Royal Tenenbaums came out. And I think that this is a box office rejection, particularly of the marketing of the style of this movie, which is that very like non-natural presentation of a story with the obsession with symmetry and this obsession with set pieces. And also I remember like the claymation being like a part of the marketing and things like that. I think that maybe turned people off. Like the claymation is like a style choice in this movie, but I think maybe it seemed like maybe the movie was partially animated if you're just watching movie trailers, which maybe made people nervous about it. One thing I really have come to understand about and I didn't understand this about Wes Anderson, I think, until I was watching The French Dispatch. In 2021, I was watching The French Dispatch. And that movie, I felt like I was watching a film craftsman do like literal donuts in a parking lot, where it was just like all the sets were immaculate, all the shots were precise and perfect, the wardrobes were amazing and perfect, and then playing with even like conceptual ideas like having segments change the aspect ratio to like signify different ideas and places and times in the story. And not being concerned at all about the audience, like disconnecting from when the aspect ratio would rotate and move and things like that. And almost rejecting the entire concept of verisimilitude, but while also like delivering a story that is full of emotion and heart and character.
Yeah.
And I think I think of a criticism of Wes Anderson that would not stand up to me would be he is someone who's obsessed with mise-en-scène, but the characters don't feel real, because that is not true. The characters don't. It might be true that the characters do not feel natural, but they do feel real, and they might feel as if they exist only in the camera frame, but the feelings that they have kind of extend beyond the camera frame. And I thought The French Dispatch was a moment in time when I was watching that movie, and I was like, this guy has read criticisms of his style and he does not care. Like anything that he criticized like I could imagine watching The Life Aquatic roll out might have been a disappointing moment in his career, watching it not sell a lot of tickets and watching perhaps people be critical of the style and saying, no, it's going to 100 over the next decade. And like even moving on to something like The Wonderful Story of Henry Sugar on Netflix, those short films, which are as unnatural presentation of film stories you can make. There's no naturalism. Literally, the people are standing on storybook sets with a narrator, yet still you feel the characters and you feel their stories. And I think Anderson just had this commitment to the idea that the artifice is part of it. What you're watching is fake. And just because you're watching someone perform with not a literal, but like through a mask, you still connect with the character. Like you can watch something that is fake and say those emotions are real. And I just think this movie, that's what this movie is about putting the gas on. The Royal Tenenbaums it's about set pieces and about costuming, but I think had a little more like naturalism to the characters in the story. And this one was like, I'm peeling back another layer of naturalism. It's going to be phonier, it's going to be faker, it's going to be more artificial and more emotional.
Yeah.
And like I think every film is a projection through that. And when I looked at the box office returns, I just thought, how courageous to be. You say he was 36 when he made this movie, to be in your mid 30s and say, that one didn't hit. The next one's going to be faker, and the next one's going to be faker, and the next one's going to be faker. And I'm going to become more precise in my style, and my style is going to become more esoteric, more personal, more hyper stylized, and I'm not going to veer away from it. I think I can imagine a timeline where The Temptation is the Life Aquatic is followed up by something much more like a naturalist film, a much more open frame movie, just to prove that he could. But not. I was just like astonished. As time has gone on, I've been like astonished by the bravery of Wes Anderson to be like, no, I'm right.
So Matt Zoller's Sights
Mhm.
has several books, and I was looking at one yesterday, and we were talking, Ian, and this is his favorite film. He's done a book on the Grand Budapest, all of his films, and he says this: "No wonder the film was a critical disappointment. It's an immense yet clearly as personal as Jacques Tati's Playtime, Spielberg's 1941, Scorsese's New York, New York, and Francis Ford Coppola's One from the Heart, all box office flops whose reputation grew with time." And I do see how it is incredibly personal, because it's a film that's about filmmaking, and it's about family, this kind of family with this group of people that you're making films with, doing dangerous things with. And the fact that those details, they don't even appear to you as you're watching the movie. They're just kind of tucked away, and they're not even the focus. But it's like he puts them there because it's meaningful to him, like having the notebooks that he wrote the script in as part of a prop.
Yeah. I obviously feel different ways about this depending on which production I've just walked out of. But walking out of this one, I do think like, no, it is all fake. So if you make it phonier, you can make it more real. Like you can push through to the other side of, yes, I constructed this reality.
Yeah.
And I want you to appreciate how constructed the reality is so you can think about what these people are feeling. Like a play. Like what's less natural than a play? Like you sit in a theater and you look at a stage and there's lights and people standing on it and clothes that aren't theirs, but you like look through that to the story and you connect. You think about the ideas, you think about the characters, you think about the emotions. And I don't know why film has this burden of then like for it to be serious, it needs to feel real. When if it feels a little cartoony, like the emotions can be more powerful.
What do you all think of Jacques Cousteau and all of that heavy reference, and the movie ends with that kind of dedication?
I love that dedication at the end of that movie, because you can't, it's like you're watching this movie, you cannot like, this is just Jacques Cousteau, like you're like, this is so self-consciously Jacques Cousteau. And then the dedication I thought was so beautiful and so sweet, and also I believe legally necessary in a way, where it says dedicated to the memory of Jacques Cousteau, and it uses his like full formal name.
Yeah.
And the Jacques Cousteau Society, or whatever his company was called, with which this film was made.
No participation.
Without participation.
Yes.
Just like, I love Jacques Cousteau is what this, like, I love the image of it. I love the feeling of it. I wanted to set a story in that world.
Yeah.
I had no permission or right to, and I did, and I'm sorry. It's like how it plays at the end. And I just think that's like a really sweet and lovely thing to be like, obviously you just watch this movie. I love this thing, and I'm going to put the name of it as fill up the entire screen with the name of it and say, I loved this thing. I loved this company, these films, this man. and the story's not about him.
Yeah.
I've taken the pieces of the image of him that I loved and I put them in this movie, which is a different story.
As someone who's hungry for, surrogate father figures in film, Peter Falk is one that I absolutely love. But the fact that Noah Baumbach wrote Squid and the Whale, that's also about a complicated father, but that the movie is ultimately about this kind of absence of celebrity father figures, and that growing up, a film like A Silent World, Jacques Cousteau's movie, could be this Oscar-winning phenomenon, or that someone like Jane Goodall, or someone like Attenborough, that these naturalists, these documentarians, deserve to be screened in Italy and a gorgeous opera house, and that to put Zissou, which feels so right, it feels discordant, but we're seeing the film within a film in this gorgeous real place, and that by sitting it in that, it's giving it that value that has fallen from that. We don't really have that regard for that art form anymore.
Yeah. I mean, I think too, your kind of master nature documentary, nature narrators, there's always a seductive quality to them. The way Jane Goodall talks about the chimpanzees, or David Attenborough talks about, or, they talk about the journey, the adventure, but also the interactions and the human relations. There's always something that's very, I'm hesitant to say erotic, but there's something that's like, they ease you into the passions that they have. And I think what this film does very interestingly is it kind of, obviously, like, Zissou wants to go kill he wants to go kill the jaguar shark for revenge, but he's out there for nature and documenting these things. But what I found really interesting is the film within a film. There's all sorts of levels of that, but also showing that even in a nature documentary, which purports to have quote unquote reality, they're like, we have to set up this shot, or you've got to have a shot of us all swimming toward the camera or moving around, or so there is all of this kind of artifice and staging that happens is a part of it. And then on top of that, and I think this is where probably kind of feels like Anderson and his film and his collaborators are like, we are frustrated with the process of trying to get money for a film, because they're like, you haven't made a hit, which is kind of, it's presumption, like with him, it's like, you haven't made a hit in 10 years and you can't secure funding to get your films made, and all the hoops that a filmmaker has to jump through to get someone to pay for, here, we need $500,000 to make the film that we want to make. And all of that, which I found to be like, clearly is probably very autobiographical at that point, but also just it's how, quite frankly, you have to whore yourself out to do the thing that you want to do, and how that gets compromised. And then, Zissou's he's dealing with his own, he's become a self-parody of himself, which I guess you could say that, like, Anderson career-wise, really, like, I make unique films. Damn it, I'm going to keep doing it until I go on the other side of self-parody, to where it is, I keep pushing things forward. So.
Yeah.
I thought an interesting thing about Steve Zissou, the character, is in this movie, he's obsessed with the idea that the other characters in the film are screwing him. Like, anytime there's like anytime a new character shows up, he's like, they're screwing us. And he has that obsession also because his whole business is essentially a scam. Like, it's like a showbiz thing. Like, he needs money, and he's always trying to, like, put on a scam that gets the money to build the phony world of Steve Zissou, which he is marketing and selling and presenting himself as a scientist and explorer, which he is not really. He's like a low budget filmmaker, not a scientist and explorer. So like the idea of Steve Zissou is like a fake scam. He always thinks everyone's trying to scam or screw him. And I always thought that, like, was like an interesting tension where he's like, they're trying to screw us before we could screw them. Was like the Steve Zissou's reaction to everything.
When Baumbach and Anderson were working on the script, they showed it to Wallace Shawn. And Wallace Shawn was like, well, what was it like before it started stinking, And I guess that's when you have that scene when they're all in that room and they're watching him pull the little marmots, or I don't know what they are, out of
Snow
the
marmots.
ice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Snow goose marmots or something like that. They're a once thought extinct species.
Yeah. And so I am wondering if there was a time of authenticity that then just slowly was eroded, because in the background of that scene, you see the Zissou pinball machine. And there's little action figures that are beside the TV, and there's the shot of the Adidas Zissou shoes that I want so bad.
Mm. I always too like that moment too is that the crew was watching the old episode, and I forget which one of it says, but someone says that's what it used to be like. And
Yeah.
but the idea is that Zissou overhears, that he eavesdrops and he hears them,
Yeah.
and he feels the regret that they have, that he's failed them,
Mm.
that it used to be a big adventure for real,
Mm.
and now it's this shambling, pale imitation of itself. Yeah, I always love that story about that screenplay, because I think it is. I forget. I read it so long ago. I probably read it in disconnection with watching the movie, so I had that in mind. That moment, that advice that Wes Anderson says always. I just remember him reading, saying, "Someone gave me this exact advice. Show me what it used to be like." And I always keep that in my mind about stories, because it is such just good general advice for a story. If you're telling me about a situation where something is wrong, is there a way in the context for you to show me when it was right, so I can feel the gap or close that jump?
Mm.
And I was watching the movie through this time. I thought that was such a powerful way to have Zissou overhear
Yeah.
the other characters say it used to be better, which is like a big idea in the movie. But like when you see his face, like hear that, you're like, oh yeah, that is sad that it used to be better.
And it feels like a parallel moment when the earring scene, when he overhears these people bad mouthing him, and he mopes out, and Ned comforts him and he throws his earring. And
Yeah,
we were talking about that scene, and just adorable scene.
just
but
so funny.
he just keeps overhearing people.
He's pouting is what he's
Yeah.
doing, because those guys didn't like his earring.
Yeah.
And he takes it off and he throws it away down the street. And then Owen Wilson gets up and goes and gets it. And he doesn't look at Owen Wilson like, watch you get the earring. But before Owen Wilson comes, he reaches out his hand and takes, because he wants the earring. He does want it. He does still in his heart think it's cool. He's just pouting because nobody else does. I think it's such I don't even know how you write that joke or how you block. It's so carefully blocked.
Mm.
And staged so well. And I do think that that is an element of this. The way that this story is told is that you're supposed to think about the blocking. You're supposed to think about the structure of the moment. And you're supposed to say not only that I'm having fun laughing at this joke in the moment, but you're supposed to think, how do you even like plan that joke or make that joke? And then you're supposed to think, well, how does that joke reveal this man to me, what he's thinking and feeling in this moment?
Yeah.
There's another moment not long after that, where I got real fascinated by this, because Owen Wilson and Bill Murray arrive at the island and they have a meeting with Angelica Houston, and they're on the island, so they're framed like in this little like vineyardy area on the island, and it's looking out into the ocean. So it's framed up 3-shot, but it's handheld, so it feels a little organic. But they're carefully spaced and perfectly blocked to deliver this 3-person scene. And then Angelica Houston steps out of the frame and the camera steps in to reframe them, which is like a great kind of like open frame, almost documentary camera move, where like the frame needs reframe. So instead of doing it on a cut or doing it with a mechanical move, it's a very human operational move. So the camera feels really alive and like open, but the frame is so closed and precise.
Yeah.
And then the scene like continues with just a few brief exchanges of dialogue, and it needs to we reframe around. So instead of cutting to the reverse, the camera walks around the two characters and then precisely reframes them. So like this really organic handheld human camera move then precisely reframes them in this expert shot, which is now showing off the reverse, which is not the ocean, but the architecture of the amazing building behind them, with their perfect placements in relationship to the architecture, which I think it shows the absence of Angelica Houston, but also gives her the space to come back into the like frame for like a scene. And it's all so staged and presentational. And then that mix of just like that handheld camera, where I was like, I'm supposed to be thinking about this cameraman as much as I'm thinking about Bill Murray in this scene. And I just get obsessed with that idea that he is so wants you to think about the movie
Mhm.
and constantly wants to make you think about the idea that you're watching a movie. You're watching something that was planned and choreographed and blocked. And the blocking is part of the story.
Mm. Yeah, feel like that attention, that specific focus on the handmadeness of everything is also why Henry Selick is involved, and that we have all these handmade, artificial, not natural animals within the world, and it emphasizes that it's a construction.
Yeah.
I still don't know if those dolphins are real or not.
Those are real dolphins.
I read they're a robot, and then I read they were. I don't know.
Those are real alive. I looked at those dolphins so carefully in this movie. I spent much of the past 2 days watching the dolphin scenes, because I did look it up,
Yeah.
Googled, were those real dolphins?
I Googled so much, Ian. I could not.
And
get
I think Google,
com-
I think Google's conflating a few different arguments. I think the idea that Google told me they're robot dolphins is a failure of how artificial intelligence works more than anything.
No. Wikipedia has gone on to say that we don't accept AI slop. So you're at least getting it from human beings who could be wrong or who could be incorrect, but still human
Yes.
beings on Wikipedia.
Yes.
So.
Yeah.
They look so much. They seem natural in the way that the jaguar shark doesn't.
This is, I think, to me, the centerpiece of this film, and I think I have a lot to say about this, but the cutaway set of the ship
oh my
is
God.
the huge centerpiece to the movie. I can't imagine it must have been the most expensive part of the film was building the set.
They bought 2 sub-Hunter World War II boats, and they cut one in half.
Mhm.
They cut one in half and built 11 different sets inside of it and set it atop a fully functional dolphin tank, just with live dolphins in it. Just doing that is an astronomical, if that came to your town, it would be the museum people came to see in your town was, they've got a sub-Hunter museum with 2 live dolphins. You would buy a ticket and walk in. It's like an incredible feat of architecture. And the movie shows it off brilliantly in one long set piece where it's let's stop the movie and tour the Belafonte. And I was just watching that. And I was like, if it was just this 4 minutes of film, this would be a remarkable movie to watch. If it was just a 4-minute short about a ship that doesn't exist. And then my big realization was, we kind of go away from that idea. It's really only for one, a important segment of the movie, but really just one kind of big set piece. But then at the end, it is the emotional core of the movie, because when Ned and Zissou have their big confrontation about Jane, it is the thing that tips them into the third act of the movie. They move through the whole set, and it pans and follows them. So I was thinking of the set as just this big visual piece, this big exciting kind of let's build something crazy and put it in the movie because it'll be crazy to spend money doing that. But then the connection to it the most emotionally centric part of the story, the emotional climax of the story, I'll design a way for it to play out through that whole set.
Mhm.
I thought was so smart and central to what the idea of the movie is. Yes, it's fake, but it's just to attract your eye to what is emotionally happening to these characters.
It's the only way to have that one shot,
Yeah.
which is really cool.
I think this is a good example of not only a detailed script, but probably some extensive planning and storyboarding. Because this is a film at the time cost $50 million. I'm sure it would cost over $100 million now, but it looks a lot more expensive than some of the shots. There's the one scene where it's the background, the whale, the orca whale is moving around. There's just some shots that are just amazing. And I think it comes out of the Anderson and the Cruises. We have to be so meticulous so we can save money. And also, but that also having all of that, you got to step here and you got to do this, that kind of frees up the actors to this is where they hit their mark. And aside from that, they can work on the character interactions and the emotions. And that's all, in the end, it's about the vehicle for delivering emotions and relationships. And I think,
I love that shot with the orca. It's rear projection.
it's like dancing around and
yeah.
It is so fascinating.
It is. And I love that reverse shot, because we're looking at Blanchett's character, which has a cat behind her that keeps playing and moving around with Noah Taylor just kind of like minding his own business.
it's his cat, probably.
And then, having these reverse shots to the orca, and it kind of establishes their power dynamic or the kind of, I don't know. I thought it was interesting to have animals as both kind of behind them.
Yeah.
I think
I've seen movies that are using the soundstage to like show off in a way that is not in service of story, but you could never criticize this film for being that way.
Yeah. And not using a soundstage as a trap, as a like, well, this is the only thing we could use, using it as an advantage. And I think too, there's so many the Zissou being constantly he's constantly surveilling, and he's completely paranoid about surveillance. I think there's the one thing where the dolphins catch Kate Blanchett and Owen Wilson's characters making out, and they're
so
like,
funny.
what? They're like, okay, we have peeping Tom dolphins, which is not out of the biological behavior of dolphins. They're kind of perverts and very vicious, even though we kind of associate positive things with dolphins. And the cats, there are all these onlookers. There's the wonderful Bud Cort as Bill Ubell, is like he has to like. He's the guy that I have to report it if it's illegal, but then he kind of is a hero and he sticks by him, and he's worth saving, which is like, we will save the company stooge, the corporate stooge.
I love that character. And I just love him in it because I can't help but think Harold and Maude is like a proto-twee movie. And that has to have been such an influence. I think he says so, like, Harold and Maude is such an influence, and just to have Harold in the movie is sweet to me.
There's this one kind of like writing, it's a joke, but also I think it was a storytelling trick. I always remember from the Darjeeling Limited in the opening of the movie, like really the first act, like the idea is that Owen Wilson's brought his two brothers together on the train. And in the first scene, they're kind of like, oh, we've met and we're on the train. And like he's gathering them and they're getting together. And he sits down and he's barely said anything to them. And he just says something like, don't you guys feel like I was kind of like your father growing up? I always thought it was the funniest joke in the movie. But it was also just a character who was like, I've arranged this whole circumstance so that by the end of this journey, you two will realize this, but I just can't wait. So I'm just going to say it to you directly so that you'll, like, I want you to look at me as your father. And I always thought it was such a funny joke, but such a revealing thing about the character, but also a joke about the whole movie, where the theme of the whole movie is you're supposed to, like, realize this about these three characters. And I always just remember that about something that really made me laugh when I was sitting in a movie theater watching it. And going back to Zissou, I realize this whole movie is full of that kind of writing, where the characters presentationally say thematic ideas about themselves. Like the one that I didn't remember it from the film, but it really like opened I just like was like, oh man, when like Ned is asking Zissou, he says, why didn't you want to be my father? And he says, I hate fathers. And I was like, yeah,
I don't want to be one.
A major idea or theme in this movie is the like rejection of fatherhood or the fear of fatherhood, and then like the desire for people to look at and see a father, and then like this cold way that he shears that off in people and the complications that creates.
Yeah, and Klaus saying, I always thought of you as my two dads, even him and his relationship.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, Cody.
I feel Steve Zissou as a character is this classical American literary cinematic protagonist in that he's flawed. Oh yeah, he's flawed. He has some charisma, obviously, but he is literally the person who causes all of the problems. And also, he's like Tony Stark in Iron. Like, I made this problem, and now I've got to fix it. So, like, they're gonna go into unprotected territory. Like, he's the one that caused them to get hijacked by pirates, but he's the one that saves them. And it is this kind of like infuriating American male character.
Oh, well, I love that anytime he had a gun in his hand, he couldn't wait to just empty the whole magazine. He would just until it would stop and not even pause to aim. Not really.
There's a scene in Lethal Weapon, 1987's Lethal Weapon, where it's Danny Glover, Mel Gibson, and there's a helicopter just comes around and shoots this guy that's going to be one of their witnesses, and then Mel Gibson's like starts shooting at it as the helicopter runs, and he runs up to the edge of the cliff and he keeps shooting until the clip is done, and it's just like, yeah. Even at the end, he shoots to the last bullet, and it kind of reminded me of when he's just like out there at the shooting at the boat as they're shooting back at him, and he clearly is bulletproof. Just all bullets miss him. But Wes Anderson would be a pretty good action director if he had to slum at any point if this whole auteur thing doesn't work out.
Well, his CinemaScope, like huge lens.
Yeah.
I think wasn't this this kind of wide lens, this CinemaScope style. I guess they've used old film stock for some of the original films with Esteban, but isn't that more for sci-fi films, like that was shot with more action movies in mind?
The 2.351 aspect ratio. Yeah, that's usually your big sci-fi films. And I think it's a really good. Actually, widescreen is really good for close-ups too. And I think that because I think a lot of times films that seem epic to me, there's wide shots and there's a lot of close-ups, and there's never this kind of middle because you make it close-up and wide. That just makes it seem more epic. Because this is kind of an epic journey that they go on.
Yeah, that was like maybe the second thing I wrote down about this movie was first thing was I was like, Bill Murray doesn't seem that old. And then the second one was, now that he's my age, I don't agree that he's an old man.
Ian, you are not. You are like 43. How old are you?
And then the second thing I wrote down was just like, this aspect ratio is luxurious.
Yeah.
Like it felt so good, super wide. I do get like super wide movies like now. Like right now we get lots of movies in IMAX. My God, like this
IMAX is actually a narrower.
yeah, but it's like big, like right.
It's big, but it's narrow. It's not. It's not quite the.
Yeah, I don't know why that super just like stretch it out felt like to me like it is like it does make it feel like like an epic like Planet of the Apes or something.
I love when he encounters the older gentleman at the International Film Festival, and he's like, sign these. And they look like, and I wrote it. I don't know where, but the names of the movies seem like old 50s sci-fi, or Ryan was saying it was like, amazing stories, or this kind of vibe.
There used to be a wildlife show called Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdoms. It was this older guy and this younger guy, and they go shoot in Africa and they're like, well, let's get this python, and the python's wrapping around like, don't stop filming, just stuff like that. It was just like dudes on safari kind of thing.
Yeah.
It felt, those kind of film posters kind of felt like that. It feels very macho, which people talk about this film being his style is this is like the most twee and most macho film ever made, because it is about dudes that need to like open themselves up emotionally a little more.
That moment when he's like, get out of here, apparently that is a moment that Bill Murray had told a young kid because the kid came up to him and asked for $10. He had signed a bunch of stuff, and this kid was then asking for money. Get out of here.
It's so fun.
Yeah, I do feel it does have that kind of like Bill Murray is famous, and I'm sure he gets bugged. Like it's the kind of thing like by that point you're maybe a little tolerant, but don't push your luck. I am a human being and I have things to do, and that sense of like celebrity can suck up. Not that I'm like, we should be wholly sympathetic to celebrities, but like their time is their time. Don't make him sign 30 things for is rather generous.
One thing I did want to talk more about was Angelica Houston's character,
Yes.
Eleanor, and how she was in Royal Tenenbaums, and just like her presence in the movie. She just has this presence, and I'd like to know what you all thought of that character.
Oh, I did
Eleanor.
think that she is barely in this movie.
She's not in it much.
But she does like, when you get to this movie, you're like, this was a movie that starred Angelica Houston.
Yeah.
Because, she's so like, looks beautiful in this movie.
So
Just so
glamorous.
fantastic. And every time she's on the screen, she feels important. Like she has this weight to the story. Then I think also part of it is just how much Steve Zissou admires her and loves her, and clearly like goes to her as the adult in the room.
Yeah.
I think he has that great moment in the end when he says, "She's always been the brains of the operation." I
Yeah.
want to say on record that she's always been the brains. So I think she has this, and I do think it's like just presence. Like I think if you put like just someone else in that role, maybe you don't even remember that character's in the film, but you remember every time you saw Angelica Houston just because she's so powerful.
Yeah. Melina Conanero, who did all the costumes, did costumes for Kubrick, Barry Lyndon, won several Oscars. She may have won an Oscar for this one, not sure, but did for Grand Budapest Hotel. Put blue contact lenses on her, put blue streaks in her hair, has like just shrouded her in blue. And I'm always thinking about intertextuality in Wes Anderson movies because it's full of it. But there's this moment when Kate Blanchett, Jane's character, is reading Proust's Swan's Way to her baby. And Baumbach and Anderson always, they mention this idea of the imagined blue. I have not read Proust, I'm going to be completely honest. But I looked up what's imagined blue. Can I read that from the book? Yeah. So let me see here. Yeah. The memory of those bright eyes would at once present itself to me as vivid azure, since her complexion was fair, so much so that perhaps if her eyes had not been quite so black, which was what struck one most forcibly on first meeting her, I should not have been, as I was, especially enamored of their imagined blue. And I just thought it was interesting that she has these contacts, the costumes, the water, just how blue the movie is. And it feels so tender and romantic, oddly.
I think,
even as it's...
Yeah, I think one of the most pivotal scenes with her uses, I think, to a great advantage in like a way to think of a story. Because I think like a phony, like she's like a character that's been gone for the movie and Steve has to go to her. I think like phony movies feel like you go to someone and they feel like they've been sitting in their office waiting for the movie to come back. But like in this story, like she's been living a life. Like he comes to her like villa and she has this like shirtless man who looks like Fabio in it.
That man came with the house, apparently.
Oh, yeah.
He just was there.
And that's my research assistant. And then she has to like pull her research assistant aside and speak to him in like Italian or Spanish and be like, "We just need 5 minutes. It'll be okay." And then he like, "Okay," and leaves and it's like you feel like she's been living this life and like she's so much more successful than Steve and like she's left kind of Steve behind. And he still needs her, but she's still in that phase where she's like, I've got no more for you, Steve. And I think that adds that sense for a character. Every time she's on the screen, it feels like she's been in another better movie.
Yeah.
That is so exactly right. And just having birds flying around her in a room.
There's something that I don't necessarily think everybody on the crew of the Belafonte, they're not cool in that they're very passionate. They get easily roused and annoyed and angry, but she's this really low key, chill presence in the film. And I mean, Angelica Houston is acting royalty. Sadly, like when she first started making films, because I think her dad put her in one of hers, and they're like, critics just bashed the crap out of her. Like what? And she was amateurish and she shouldn't be there. And you know what? She did more acting. She worked. She got a lot better. Won an Academy Award for Prizzi's Honor. But there's just a kind of chill, confident presence to her. It's just so relaxed. It's something that stands in such stark contrast to everybody else in the film that it just works. And she kind of low-key steals every scene she's in.
You're right. Everybody in this movie has this nervous energy.
Yeah.
Like even in their performances, like this intense anxiety where she doesn't feel like she needs to be doing a lot to be powerful.
Yeah. And she's certainly someone who can if you've ever seen The Witches.
I love The Witches.
She really hams it up in that one, and she can do that, but she can also play she just let the scene kind of come to her and kind of wins every scene.
Another Roald Dahl connection with Anderson too. Even though that's not an Anderson film, I'd love it.
It's certainly Roald Dahl is certainly an influence on Wes Anderson films. I was thinking maybe something you had said, Ian, and I was kind of interested in your not only this, but you talked about some of the mic drops with David Bowie songs, but also
Oh,
that there are a lot of these are adaptations of
Mm.
David Bowie songs from C. George, who is an actor. He was most famous in a little film called City of God,
oh
one
yeah,
of the
yeah,
greatest
yeah.
Oh.
films
That is
ever
a great
made. He was
movie.
one of the gangsters, and he's also a Brazilian musician. So it's like he didn't train to be or didn't train to play guitar. He already played guitar and was a musician. So he adapted all those Bowie songs into Portuguese.
One of the things I had to confront with this movie was when I put it on, I
Mm.
had to personally confront how long it's been since 2004. Which in
Mm.
my mind, I was like, oh, this is a very fresh movie. I love Wes Anderson movies, and this one might as well have come out last year. But when I put it on, I was like, oh, a lot of this does feel a little dated. Some of it to its advantage. Like, I think shot super wide, shot on film, looks delicious. I was like, yes, this is what movies used to look like. So I was really excited by those kinds of things. But also some of it, I was like, oh, that was a time and place that's gone forever. Like I was like my students, I have students, and they have said a number of them have said the following sentence that every time they say it, like I get a chill in my body. They'll describe something as like, like a 2000s movie. Like, and I'm like,
No.
and I'm always like, what does that mean to them?
Yeah.
What is that? And I kind of know what they mean. They kind of mean like it feels like Lindsay Lohan could be in it, but like I'm like, is that a 2000s movie? So this was a time when I put it on and it started. I was like, this is a 2000s movie,
Oh.
and it has things in it that I do think are classic and timeless. Like the look and style of it could have come out yesterday, and the world would be a better place if movies still looked like this.
Mm.
But some of it I was just like, oh, this is a very early 2000s. And a lot of that is because Wes Anderson was inventing this style for the early 2000s, and I think some of it doesn't feel fresh because people have copied his style for like
so much so.
the obsession with like the 70s records. This one all entirely focused on David Bowie, but that first time Life on Mars played, I was like,
Yeah.
oh, we are coming out of the 1990s, and this one
Mm.
that was more like an obsession. For some reason, the So George stuff, I remember feeling so fresh and so new in
Mm.
2004. When I was watching it, I was like, no, I think that was kind of like a style. Because immediately I started thinking of like I think it was the late 90s when like There's Something About Mary came out, or at least earlier in the
Jonathan
2000s,
Richman.
where we had Jonathan Richman on screen playing
Oh.
songs. And I was like, no, that is maybe like a late 90s, early 2000s stylistic idea. The big romantic injections of songs, like I think you would use a song, I don't know, like I don't think you would have an action scene play out where the first thing that happened in the action scene was the diegetic sound disappeared and the Stooges Search and Destroy came on, and I was just like, that is a very 2004 feel. And I do feel like, to me, I wanted this movie to be more timeless, but I was like, no, this is a 2004 time capsule. And like Wes Anderson was just of that in this film was of that time, and he was capturing something that was very hip and very new, very brand new in 2004 that is no longer the case. And I had to confront that idea of like, oh yeah, this does feel like a 2000s movie. I know what they mean.
Yeah. What do you think of Mark Mothersbaugh?
Oh, I thought the score to me was one
Mm.
of the most dated aspects. Like the original score I was like, that was that early 2000s sound, which, like in his defense, Mark Mothersbaugh invented as brand new in 2004. But it has been 20 years since that sound was prevalent. To me, Mark Mothersbaugh is like very prolific
Mm.
and very influential. And I do think particularly, I haven't looked at his career very carefully, but I do think particularly more so at that time. So that musical style was all over everything. They were like, Mothersbaugh was doing like McDonald's commercials and things like that at that time. So that exact synthesizer sound and the way
Yeah.
those songs were constructed, I was like, that does belong to 2004. It's not that it's not cool.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
very cool.
He just did Hoppers.
Yeah.
Yeah, the new Pixar movie.
Yeah,
Which is very good. I liked it
Yeah.
a
Oh, I
lot.
heard it was great.
Yeah.
But that opening like harpsichord when we're in the theater, that's him too. And I kind of loved his idea of like it felt like a child imagining what fancy music was like. It's like, okay, there's a harpsichord and then there's some horns and then it's strings, and when you listen to it, it feels like hearing, I don't know, classic,
Yeah.
a kind of fancy song through a child's mind.
I can't think of a way to say this without making it sound like a criticism of the score that I do not intend.
No.
But I thought when I was listening to it, I thought, oh, the original score in this sounds like the music that came with Final Cut in the mid 2000s that you hear in all those old like 2006 YouTube videos. And that's on purpose because they were aping Mark Mothersbaugh when they were making that kind of like temp music. And I was just like, that's what I heard. I was like, this sound is 2004. This style of music, and I bet if I watched Hoppers, like you would hear Mothersbaugh like working that style, but in a very way that's really fresh and new.
Yeah.
But what I was thinking was, I'm not ready to confront that sound as retro.
Visualize that
sense.
man with his really old dog in his lap and just surrounded by Casios, because that's what it was.
Well, I think too.
It's really adorable.
I think it's really reflective of the music, the David Bowie covers, and the music is very the Belafonte is very self-contained. They literally have an editing suite and sound and a library and research, and yes, the sauna hot tub situation. Like it's all self-sustaining as long as they have funds and they have bodies. They have interns to help run things.
Oh,
things
the
like that.
interns.
I was trying to think too, like, because this also had a very late 90s, early 2000s obsession with being a parody of the 1970s, which was like very much in the style of those movies. Like all those Tarantino movies were like basically parodies of 1970s styles. This movie is a parody of 1970s styles. And then I was thinking about like, well, if you think that's what a 2000s movie is, like when does like you can't get, when does it like just put out garbage information because you're like trying to Xerox the style that was Xeroxed? Like can you look back 20 years and like make a parody of a movie from 20 years ago because it's already a parody of a movie from 40 years ago?
When is a parody? When is it a parody and when is it homage?
Yeah,
And when
yeah.
is it
Like,
affectionate?
A genuine, I just think the style's better, which is how I think it comes across in these Anderson films. Is I just think this is better.
Yeah.
I think the clothes were better, and I think the music was better, so I'm going to use it.
I Cananero hand painted those swimsuits and wanted them all to look like sardines, which I think is so funny. Like when they're running during their big action scene to the hotel, it's like little.
Yeah, I mean, you really see the shape of the human body at different
Yes.
ages when they're
At the end of this movie, they use Queen Bitch, that David Bowie song, and I was trying to think like, all right, so if Anderson is in 2004 and he's looking back at Queen Bitch as the coolest song in the world to close your movie with, what would you sit at in 2026? What would be the equivalent? And then I was just like shocked at the songs I was thinking of. I was like, oh, you would put in like Franz Ferdinand. That's what you would put in. Like that's where we're looking back. That's what we'd be looking back to.
Arcade Fire.
Yeah.
Early Arcade
Yeah.
Fire. Yeah.
There is an outlier song though, and it's when they're in the submersible.
Oh yeah, what was that piece of music? Do you know?
It was Sigur Rós.
Okay.
And I had to look it up because it wasn't in the soundtrack, or at least not the soundtrack I could stream. But it's Starulfur, and it means elf, or like a little elf staring at me. And it's like such a tonally different song in that moment. And I guess Bill Murray had been working so hard on that set that he genuinely was just exhausted in that moment when they put their hands on him. He is like feeling it. But I think that's such a beautiful, sincere moment, and the music is different in that
Yes, it is
moment.
very different. It is yeah, you're right, because the idea is they're in a different world. They've literally gone through the veil, like under the water, into the darkness, and come out in stop motion animation world.
Yeah.
And then the music does comment on that by presenting you with something that's so different in contrast to all the rest of the music is David Bowie and reflections of David Bowie. Here they give you something different. Also, Sigur Rós is maybe the most 2004 band of all time. I can't think of it.
Yes. And to glimpse the largest stop motion creation at that time. That apparently,
Jaguar shark.
yeah, the Jaguar shark was the largest
like
Wow.
stop motion.
How was it
puppet.
large? Like it was just
It's the
physically
biggest.
large?
It's the biggest.
What?
At that time?
Do you know what size it was? I can't imagine.
I think
If you told me it was 2 inches big, you told me it was a mile long, I'd be like, that all sounds right.
I think it was enormous.
Yeah.
Like it filled a room.
Yeah.
So I just that and the way it comes up in that music, it feels so ethereal, and he doesn't kill the shark, and it's not a revenge tale.
Or even in that moment, desire to anymore. Like he's let go of that.
Bogdanovich hated that Anderson killed off Ned, but in real life, Jacques Cousteau's son died from a seaplane accident.
Yeah.
And when they're doing that sea burial, it's Owen Wilson and Luke Wilson's father that's actually
Performing the ceremony.
And so it's interesting having real family members opposite of this created film family, watching Owen Wilson into the sea.
Who's very much alive still.
Yes, I love him so much. But yeah.
I did want to go back on David Bowie just a little bit because I thought one of the things was because why do they play so much David Bowie music other than it's awesome? And it's mostly his earlier stuff. It's everything pre the Berlin era, which is also great. But I feel like Bowie is kind of thought of as this chameleon. He can mutate, he can adapt. And I think it was one of the articles you talked. There was that comparison of like David Bowie, he's going through a midlife crisis. Steve Zissou is going through a midlife crisis, and that even the people who were able to adapt at some point won't be able to adapt. And it to me, this is a ostensibly 36 is young to me, 36-year-old filmmaker who's making a film that feels like the work of a middle-aged filmmaker. It's like, I don't know what to do. There's a frustration with that, and also the pressure to change, because I think one of the things like always can't stand, like I have to say, I'm without fail, when like current reviews come in for contemporary movies, I've got to the point where I'm like, okay, a lot of these people are going to be wrong about the film, better or worse. That's their initial reaction. They don't see what's hugely problematic about the film or what is really interesting about a film, in my experience. This is why there'll be no end to the box office bombs we can talk about that are actually good. Although we should certainly talk about some that are terrible. That's fun too. But that a lot of times the themes and the ideas of a film don't really come to us till a little time has passed. And it feels like this film feels like a very reflective work. So it seems like the work of an anxiety-ridden, what am I going to do creatively, middle-aged filmmaker, and not a young filmmaker. But I imagine that pressure of what are you going to do next? Is it going to be as good as Rushmore or the Royal Tenenbaums was already on his mind at that point? So,
discovering Indian Paintbrush and Stephen Rawls and how it's this billionaire figure who has been, bankrolling? Is that the phrase? Wes Anderson
funding.
since 2007.
mm-hmm.
And people regard him as this Medici-like figure, that he has someone who is just letting him do these creative things. And that is wildly uncommon.
Yeah.
And just kind of understanding, this is how he's kind of able to kind of keep going after something fails.
Yeah.
Really.
Oh, yeah, maybe that, because I do think that this would be just a real, you're right. That moment in 2004 would have been a very big pothole for any filmmaker. And I can think of many filmmakers who had two movies that were interesting and growing, and their third most expensive movie ever doesn't go.
Yeah.
Like I always think about, you guys know Neil Marshall, he made Dog
The
Soldiers
Descent,
and The Descent,
which is awesome.
and then his third one was the one that was like Escape from New York, and it didn't go.
He also did Centurion, which I thought was okay.
Yeah. But I just remember that one kind of it was the most expensive one.
That had Jason Statham in it, didn't it?
Maybe, I don't remember.
Yeah, I think it had Jason Statham.
But like, there's that energy to a filmmaker where it's like you make the cheap one, you make the mid-size one, you make the mid-size one that's surprisingly successful, then they give you the big one,
And you tank it.
and it, and you either make the big one huge and then you're indelible, or the big one doesn't go and that's what you got. That's the end of that. And Anderson is someone who stepped around that in a big way, right? Is that because of that Indian paintbrush connection, you say?
Well, this guy, I mean, he just bought Criterion
Yeah.
and Janus and seems to really love Wes Anderson. And I guess when Henry Sugar won Best Short Film, they were working on Phoenician Scheme. And so they both were kind of he's like, oh, Steve can't be here. We can't be, because he's the producer. He's producing all of these films now for Anderson. But yeah, you know, Life Aquatic is before that. And that financial stress that's within the film. That tension is very much part of the filmmaking of it.
And it seems like it's a situation where don't lose us too much money if it's a bomb, but if you make a lot of money, that's good too. But if we can kind of keep the budget and at least make our money back, we can still keep doing the kind of films you want to do. Which, yeah, it's good to have patronage.
It is, and it is interesting by the numbers, looking at these box office returns for these Wes Anderson movies. Just because I'd never looked at the budget versus returns breakdown for Anderson particularly. Someone I think of as a very successful filmmaker. Only like even the movies that are like successful aren't blow away successful, and many of them are like even Stevens, like Fantastic Mr. Fox and The Phoenician Scheme still at this moment. But I just do think he's a filmmaker who always has an audience, which has a value, and probably also like makes money outside of the box office, like through like what used to be whatever streaming rights or however those are. I don't know if those are like as lucrative as they should be, maybe, but also through like DVD releases and home video sales, if those are still even making any money. But I think there's always that audience for people who are interested in Wes Anderson, and they're like more like permanent. Like you can count on or rely on that for a new Wes Anderson movie to generate some amount of interest.
Yeah, I saw Asteroid City and I could not connect with it. It was like the first time I did not connect with one of his films, and I need to rewatch it. I don't know why. It has puppets in it, it has stop motion, it's stunning, it has that deadpan acting.
Yeah.
But yeah, did you all see that one?
I haven't seen that one yet. I haven't seen that many Wes Anderson films. I need to watch more, I feel like.
You do, Cody?
Yeah.
For me, that Henry Sugar one also helped. I just feel like a penny really dropped when I watched the Henry Sugar shorts, because I was just like, no, he is so far on the other side of reality that he understands it better than me. like just it's so presentational, but like so rich. I was like, no, he's right. He was always right. He was always moving in the right direction. And anyone who ever said it's too fake, it's too phony, it's too twee, like they were wrong.
Well, I think what's really cool about the Henry Sugar one, the house, the writing hut that Rafe Fiennes is in, playing Roald Dahl, that's how we enter the story. He always has those frame stories where he's writing and telling the story of Henry Sugar. That's exactly a recreation of that writing shed that Roald Dahl wrote in. And he's wearing the clothes that Roald Dahl. And it's just that attention to detail. I watched that movie and I broke down sobbing, not because of Henry Sugar, but because of the care that went into how perfect it was. And to love something and to care that much for it to be that perfect.
Yeah.
I didn't know how to process it.
The way he tells a story in some of those Roald Dahl ones is so striking to me. Like the one I think of is the Rat Catcher, which I think Rafe Fiennes plays the Rat Catcher in the Rat Catcher. And there is a rat.
And it's so funny.
Yeah, it's very funny. And there's a rat in the story. And sometimes the rat is a stop motion rat.
Yeah.
And sometimes the rat is like just like a stuffed like rat, just like a still physical object. And sometimes the rat is nothing. It's just an invisible thing Ray Fiennes is pretending to interact with.
I know.
And I don't like just the bravery of that choice and like having to explain to everyone and get everyone on board with, for this sequence, you aren't going to have anything. And you have to pretend that you're holding the rat and it's going inside your shirt and you're reacting to it. Just the way that moves through the piece seamlessly, perfectly tells the story, and you never disconnect from it. But it never stops poking with the idea that also we made the rat. Also, I sewed the rat. Also, I animated the rat. Also, the rat is imaginary, like literally in your imagination right now. I was like, yeah, this storyteller was right the whole time since 1996. He was on the right track.
He is able to capture a child's mind, I feel.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's children's stories being told. He's telling these stories and having that. It's like what a kid would do when you would imagine, you would pretend and play.
Yes, I think so too, because I think if you read this screenplay, you would read it and you would say, I read a story about fathers and sons and the desire for someone to be a father and how someone can do that without doing that. And like the negotiation of, will you be my father, is like this intense thing. And then you'd say, that's very emotionally interesting. And you would put the script down and you would say, how are you going to do the shark? and then for him to say, in the most playful, childlike way imaginable.
Yeah.
And for you to, I just would have such a hard time connecting with the vision, where I'd be like, what is that? I don't think it's going to play right. But it does in this movie, I think.
Friedberg completely creating an underwater forest for them to swim down in, and for that to be a moment that Ned is talking to him about calling him dad, and he has to like push, and that static of connection and communication in this beautiful, awkward setting.
Yeah. Also, I think a great storytelling moment, like to take a look at, because if from a top-down perspective, the storytelling moment is this great like art design set piece where it's like, what's your idea for the scene? Well, they're underwater moving through an impossible phosphorescent forest that's made out of these materials. That's a great idea for a scene. What's happening in the scene? That also has to be like emotionally relevant. And it's like he's asking for the first time if he can call him dad, and everyone else is rejecting that concept like as a non-starter.
Stevie.
Just how about Stevie?
I was thinking about, it occurred to me because there is a Noah Baumbach connection. I was like, clearly a film like Barbie, which is a great film, by the way, is clearly indebted to that kind of stylized set design, but also as a place for strong emotional characters working through things. I don't think if you didn't have somebody like a Wes Anderson, you would still certainly have a Greta Gerwig, but you wouldn't have had something like Barbie the way they were willing to make it. And that made a buku amount of bucks. So
yeah, I always think if you're looking at Anderson and you're thinking about the wallpaper, you're paying attention to the wrong things. Like it is about character and it's about intensely emotional moments.
There's my favorite scene is when the coffin is floating down into the water and you see the flag that Ned had made. And you just see Eleanor's face through the little porthole down under the deck. And she's watching it descend.
Smoking weed or smoking a cigarette or something.
Yeah, just that moment, because one of the big things for Cousteau was that he invented the aqua lung. He invented scuba diving before they had to wear those those like huge diving suits. And you're just always looking out of the porthole, and just something so isolating. Like her character just feels so isolated from the men.
Yeah.
And just her sorrow, because she's also someone who they talk about wanting to have kids, but they don't have kids. And kind of seeing this figure that was meaningful to Steve.
I think it was after Ned's death.
Yeah.
Steve comes to her and says, I wanted to talk to you about it. Adopting Ned. And and she's like, well, he was 30.
I would have considered.
He says, well, would you have done, like, that's what he just wants her to say.
I appreciate
I
that.
love you and we could have been a family. Like, that's what I need you to say, I love you. We could have been a family. Like, he just needs that from her. And she just very politely gets as close as she can to it. I would have
Yeah.
considered it. That's her. That's her olive branch to him. I would have thought about it.
Another adorable moment. He's trying to get her to come meet Ned, and he's right behind her. She's like, okay, bring him over. He's right there. I love it. Love
There
it.
is a Ned storytelling moment that just popped in my mind that I was really impressed by in this story is the issue of the letters that are handled, which
Yeah.
I thought was an interesting way to tell a story, which is first you encounter the response letter, is Zissou writing a letter to Ned where he answers Ned's questions and responds to him, and you see like the letter is very presentational, perfectly presented in this artfully like shadow box photograph of a letter. But the conversation is backwards. So you hear Zissou's response, which has a gap in it where you don't really understand what Ned has asked him or what Ned has wanted from him, but you just read his response. And then that lingers over as this very important moment. And the only thing he ever had from his father was this postcard where he gave him like a fan letter response as if he were nobody.
Yeah.
And then
Transcribed and not read.
yes, transcribed not read. And then that lingers over the movie for more than 90 minutes until at the end Zissou says, I have your letter. And that's very like he proves that I knew about you and I never acknowledged you, but I maybe wanted to in some way. In my way I did. Like I still have your letter. And then you read the letter he wrote, which you get to fill in the story in this gap, and you have to chronologically reorganize the conversation in your mind over the hour and a half of film text that is filled in. And it's a very complicated way to engage with those sentiments, but it all makes sense. And it plays as a big reveal, but it's very understated. There's no big revelation. It's just a sweet, cute letter.
That he just held on to it.
Yes. Yeah. And I just liked, I don't know how you imagine that. I'll do the letters backwards. I don't know how you get that idea as a storyteller, but it was such a strong, this was somebody who was really really hitting their stride as a storyteller.
I mean, it does the setup in a different way, but then the payoff. So we're kind of, this will come back up at some point. We'll get to see that letter.
Yeah.
So it seems like a advanced level storytelling setup and payoff.
Yeah, I think the way the idea would occur to me naturally would be oh, Ned can say, I wrote you a fan letter when I was a kid, and this is what it said. And at the end, Steve can say, I wrote you a reply, but I never sent it, and this is what my reply was. But to do it backwards, I was that's so strong. I never would have got there in 100 years.
I love that. I love Eric Anderson, his brother's artwork. It's just all the DVD covers, but the little fly, the Zissou Kentucky fly is a little Eric drawing.
It should be a gnat, really, or something like that. Yeah. Yeah,
and I think that's the tiniest puppet or the tiniest handmade creature in the whole movie.
Oh yeah, I just thought it was a fly.
Well, I appreciate the fact that they didn't let's kill this fly to put this in our movie so we can have a compelling moment in the movie. Let's just make it so we don't have to kill a fly for that specific purpose. There are plenty of reasons to potentially kill a fly, but to make a little nice moment in our movie doesn't have to be one of them.
But Cody, that's not a Zissou fly. None of the animals are real.
Yeah.
But I do think that is part of the intention of the movie. What's the purpose of this story? Well, to make little interesting objects and fill them up, the sets up with them, and then photograph them. And then never lose sight of also all of it has to be in service of character and story constantly.
Yeah, there is a cane in one of the scenes that has a dolphin kind of handle. And apparently it has the monogram of Lord Mandrake. No one sees that or knows about it unless you watch film commentary. But there it is. Yeah. That is Lord Mandrake's dolphin cane.
Oh, nice.
Well, it's that textured quality to this film, and I think good filmmakers, and obviously they had a bigger budget, so they could indulge in this kind of layering of the film, like the portraits. I think you mentioned some of the portraits that you see of each of them at whatever society they're at, and how they're, it's very funny, and how aggrandizing those images are, and they're really there to placate the ego of the person in the portrait, but also to piss everybody off about that portrait. So, Zissou hates Alistair's portrait because it seems.
Oh, we haven't even talked about
Goldblum.
Nothing about Goldblum. is such a delight. Such a delight. All his fancy, Explorer 2 vessel with its cappuccino machine,
Yeah,
and
he's well funded. He's the one that sucks up all the grant money.
yes,
And one thing is he has this apparently just blonde German crew. They're all that, whereas Zissou has a slightly more international crew. So I think we naturally kind of side with Zissou, even though he's a jerk. But Alistair Hennessy is a bigger jerk, and he clearly has a type that works for him.
I just laughed so hard that I just forgotten about that moment where Zissou accidentally discovers him on the island, and he says, "You came to rescue me," and he just goes, like, it's such a funny take.
And then he gets shot. I guess a shot that went clean through his body, but he manages to escape and live. So, yeah. So, are there any? This has been a wonderful discussion, but any last minute thoughts and reflections from the folks here?
I am only beginning to become emotionally ready to consider the idea that 2004 was surely closer to 25 years ago than it is 20 years ago, and that must mean something in my life, and that that if when I am returning to those things from that time, I am like, oh yeah, I was young then, and I am no longer. And I just think Wes Anderson was right. He's right the whole time, and he was undeterred. I always think that maybe this might have been a moment that deterred someone who was not so powerful in their convictions about what my approach to filmmaking is. And I just started to admire him. Like, oh, he didn't get turned away. He went deeper. He went harder. And I kind of admired that about him this week.
I think that nobody has ever been like him. I don't think anybody will be. If not, there'll be a pale imitation. But he's a unique artist with a unique vision, and he committed to the bit. So
I adore him. Anyone who cares about making things with your hands, writing longhand, elevating the art of letter writing, especially now when I feel removed from those things, someone who cares about it and uses it to tell the rigor and time and long filmmaking, not trying to do shortcuts. There's just something really admirable about it when I think I'm constantly being told, like, take the shortcut,
Yeah.
Do it the easy way.
And mentorship and fatherhood is difficult, and the negotiation of it is emotionally complicated.
Yes.
I think one of the things I do think, kind of just talking with y'all, I better understand why my 2004 self didn't want to go see this movie and would have been turned off by this movie. I think it was just because it's just the stupid things you think when you're in an MFA program. Am I right?
I've been obsessed with. I'm one of those twee,
Yeah, but
annoying people.
But you think about something and like, this is what I have to. And I think I was really into mimetic art, but realism, or trying to mirror reality in the stuff I was doing, the stuff I liked, and this thing that felt this is not abstract at all, but it's very stylized, would have been a turnoff for me. And then, decades later, I'm the film teacher. I'm a film teacher, and I'm the thing I feel like right out of the gate I like to tell students is, okay, it doesn't have to be realistic to be good. It's called stylization. And, in some ways that it can be a heightened reality. It's just because it's realistic doesn't mean it's good. And realism is the taste of an era. Films in the 1930s that were realistic look absurd and melodramatic to us now, but that doesn't mean they're not good. And Anderson is a great example. Like, films I teach now in like intro to film studies, I'll teach House, the Japanese horror film. It's like, that is a very stylized film, or Daisies. And it's got a lot of the cutty stuff. Literally, they have characters who are cutty things on the screen. And that, you know, there is a way to tell stories that does, like, I think realism is important, but is that tension between realism and stylization or formalism, and that he's a great example of that, not only a master of stylization in filmmaking, but also a great person to introduce people like, I love realism, only realism. I want things to mirror reality. It can do that, but it can do other things as well. The emotional reality is certainly there in these films, but the way the film looks in the world is like, hey, we don't want everything to be realistic looking. It can be fun too. And his films are very fun. And I think that's what matters.
And it's also just some friends who grew up together and liked telling stories. And I love that. It's just like a couple of friends who wrote a script together and somehow Bottle Rocket became a thing.
Yeah.
And so I'm invested.
Yeah. And then they've made other friends that have been working with them, that, you know, regular collaborators in front of and behind the camera. So it's hard not to root for Wes Anderson and his crew. So, well, that's all the time we have. I want to again thank very much Ian and Nicole.
Thank you, Cody.
And thank you. Well, I'll try.
Thank you, Ian.
So be well, take care. Make sure to like, subscribe, and share. And we'll see you next time around.